mixed WASDA report, surprise tax cuts out of Argentina, and major shifts in global wheat, corn, and soybean markets. There's a lot for traders and farmers to digest this morning. From bearish signals on wheat to fresh buying activity out of China, and even new aid announced for U.S. producers. The landscape is moving fast. I'm Johanna Bota, and joining us now to break down the key takeaways is Bertrand Oesterle, VP of Clearing and Execution Sales at StoneX. Welcome back, Bert.
Good morning.
So I want to start with last night's WASDA report. What were some of the key takeaways?
So the WASDA report yesterday was mostly uneventful in a way. The main elements were the world stocks and US stocks for corn and soybean, which were seen as slightly supportive, while for wheat, the world and US stocks were seen as bearish. One of our US colleagues pointed out once again that when you look at the figures from the USDA for last year compared to the coming season in wheat, there's an increase of about 43 million tons of output in wheat worldwide in the main producing areas, and that is in a way summing up the wheat situation whereby the supply side has been bearish.
Okay. We also had an announcement from the Argentinian government on export taxes. How did the market react to those news?
So that was the bearish element of yesterday. It is also putting some pressure again today. So correctly, the Argentine came in to revise their tax percentages on soybean, wheat and corn, and they've reduced them all. So basically it makes them more competitive on the international market. And when we look at the specific figures, the soybean export tax out of Argentina is set at 24%, down from 26 previously. In corn, 8.5, down from 9.5 previously, and in wheat, 7.5, down from 9.5 previously.
Earlier you mentioned the bearish tone for wheat from the USDA. Any other important development in wheat?
So there's been plenty of news in wheat, and when we look at the US side, we had a USDA report this week about the crop conditions in Kansas, and they are rising once again. It's 70% good to excellent. It's 4% better than the previous week, and it's 8% better than 2 weeks ago. So it's going well in the US in that sense. Also, we had some report out of India. We hadn't heard about India for quite some time, and the soil moisture is very abundant, and people are talking of a potential record area coming in India, and we're going to have to watch out. We also had an update from StatsCan over the past week, which came in with a big crop estimate for Canada, some 40 million tons, some 11.2% better than last year. The USDA came in very close, 39.96 million tons. And then when we look at Argentina, the USDA came in at about 24 million tons, which is within the range that we had mentioned last week, which is 24-27. Then when we look at the EU, the USDA came in at 144 million tons. That's very similar to what Coseral put this week for the EU plus UK. And then when we look at Russia, we had seen recently estimates, or I should say realistic estimates, of 83.8 to 86.5 million tons. The USDA came much higher, 87.5. And when we look at the export estimates for December, currently they are in the range of 3.9 to 4.6 million tons, and that's higher than last year, the 3.4 to 3.7 million tons. And it's an indication that once again, Russia started exporting slower at the start of the season, and it's trying to catch up. Also, we could mention Australia. So for Australia, we had LSEG and Abaris putting a crop at 35.8 million tons, actually 35.6, and we had the USDA coming in at 37. So when we put all this together, it puts a lot of headline pressure once again, and it's no surprise that the specs are expected to remain short in Euronext, for example. The specs are some 235,000 lots short. The funds in particular, 266,000 lots short. The only thing that comes to mitigate a bit of the bearishness is the few tenders we've had. And there's been a large tender result over the past week from Algeria. They bought 810 to 900,000 tons of wheat for February delivery, or shipment, I should say. Then the Thai came in to buy some 300,000 tons of feed wheat, and we've had regular buying from Jordan or South Korea, for example.
Okay, let's touch briefly on corn stalks, which you mentioned earlier. Mentioned lower corn stalks. Does this have to do with higher demand?
So there's a bit of two elements. There's lower output and some demand considerations. So on the lower output, the USDA came in with a 3 million ton correction for its Ukrainian estimate, with 29 million tons compared to 32 previously. The rest of the market is not so in accordance, saying that their range of estimates is 30 to 32. The rest of the market considers that the issue with Ukraine corn might be more of an issue on quality because of untimely rain at the harvest rather than lower output. Also, we had some indication from Agro-Rural for Brazil. So the estimates we've had for Brazil for the corn crop are high, but Agro-Rural stated that the first corn crop may see a little bit of a reduction in output estimate because we have some dryness issues in Rio Grande do Sul, for example.
Okay.
Then in terms of demand, China put a report out, the Agricultural Ministry, saying that they see the Chinese corn imports at 6 million tons. That's better than 1.83 last year. And that's despite a higher production, 300 million tons compared to 295. And in terms of tenders we had this week, there's been quite a few eventful tenders. We had Mexico buying some 390,000 tons of US corn. We had also Colombia buying 100,000 tons of US corn. South Korea bought something like 268,000 tons of corn, and we had Taiwan buying 130,000 tons of corn.
Okay, let's talk about soybean. Has China bought any soybean? The saga continues, or any other oilseeds news for that matter?
So China continues to buy. There was a confirmation of 462,000 tons of US soybean being bought. So when we looked at what has been confirmed so far, the tally is around the 3.7 to 4.3 million ton mark so far. It's still far away from the 12 million ton that Besant wanted by the end of December, but it's still growing. We also had the Chinese customs reporting the November Chinese imports at 8.11 million tons. That's down from 948 in October. And then we had some mixed news out of China. So the Agricultural Ministry stated that the expected imports from China will be 95.8 million tons. That's way below the 109.4 million tons of the previous season. And that is putting things in question. Has China built up enough stocks to be able to slow down its soybean imports? And is it boding ill for US or Brazilian exports?
Right.
So that's the uncertainty. But at the same time, Sinograin or Sanograin came in to say that they are starting to think about releasing some old purchases of soybean which are currently in reserves onto national auctions. And the first one is a large one, 512,500 tons. And the market has reacted very quickly, especially our US participants, to say China is making space. That means they're going to buy more US soybeans.
All right.
And then when we look at other news in oilseeds, if we look at South America, the Brazilians, we still have a estimation of 177 to 179 million tons, generally speaking. The USDA came in a bit lower, 175. They didn't change their estimate. And planting is almost finished. And when we look at Argentina, again, the USDA didn't change its estimate, 48.5 million tons. And we have had some reports of some planting delays, which we will have to watch out for. And finally, if we talk of canola and rapeseed, we had StatsCan coming in this week with a 21.8 million ton output estimate for Canadian canola. It's a huge amount. It's some 13.3% better than the previous year. And in a way, it's going to be interesting to see how the specs will react to that piece of news over the past week. The specs have been building a long position in Paris in rapeseed for the past 6 weeks, 38.3 thousand lots by last Wednesday. So we're going to have an update this afternoon at around 4 o'clock. So it's going to be interesting to see if the specs have reduced their position on the back of StatsCan or if they've stuck to their guns, which is basically an argumentation based on the fact that China would be looking to buy non-GM Australian canola. So the rest of the world would have to come to Europe in order not to have to compete with China and would have to look to buy European rapeseed. And at a time when the Ukrainians are likely to export less because they plan to increase their crush capacity to 1.4 million tons, up from 490,000 tons the previous year.
Okay, and last but not least, let's end on President Trump, who has been saying for a while that there would be some relief for farmers, and they actually had a meeting on Monday. I believe it was Monday. Has anything been decided yet?
So Trump has decided indeed it will be $12 billion of tariff revenue, which will be distributed to farmers. So why the decision now? It seems that Trump was waiting for Besant to get rid of his farms. So that investment has been unwinded, and therefore Besant can't say he's a farmer anymore. In terms of opinions in the market, it's been a bit difficult because people look at what a bailout amount of money would mean to farmers.
Right.
And some are saying that it is likely to entice farmers to entrench themselves even more into farmers selling retention, i.e. why should I sell? I've got bailout money coming.
Right.
Others are saying that it may entice farmers to plant more, i.e. whatever I plant, it grows, it doesn't grow, it's a good price, it's a bad price, doesn't matter, I get bailout money. So the USDA put out some figures this week also about planting for the 26-27 season, and for wheat it came out at 44 million acres compared to 45.3 the previous season. In corn, 95 million acres against 98.7 the previous season, and in soybean some 85 million acres compared to 81.1 the previous season. And that's where on the soybean area, it raised a few eyebrows. Why would farmers want to plant so much soybean when they've got so much uncertainty about how much China will buy, especially when China is saying that they will import 95.8 million tons and not 109.4?
Bert, that was a lot of information. Thank you so much for your insight. As always, very detailed. And thank you so much for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.